Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, everyone. I was telling everybody that I have notes because I tend to talk too fast. So I'm so grateful to be a presenter. It's a good opportunity to talk a little bit more and get more experience through Pasos as well. And I've done these Embracing Cariño trainings. I think this is my third or fourth year. So I'm super excited to take that, to go from an attendee to an actual presenter. So thank you. And the title of my presentation is Identity Through Family Recipes. Just on a simple level, I love food. I love food. I was never a picky eater growing up. When I was little, I would try everything. Never a picky eater, so I guess I made my parents' lives easier in cooking everything for me because I was willing to try it all. So as an adult, I expand my horizons a little bit more every day. And I think on top of it, living in this, I'm born and raised, as my bio I think says, born and raised in El Paso. So I've always been a member of this community. So being a unique part of this community where food is a major influence of culture has also branched my just general admiration for food. And I feel that food and culture are just such a wonderful bridge together of identity. So that's the general theme of my topic, why I chose this topic, and in general. So just before I get started, just some examples of, why living on the border especially brought to this profound admiration for food. Whenever I leave town, I don't know if anybody's had a similar experience, but when I leave town, my friends and I, for example, went to a movie theater one time in another city, and it's normal here for us to ask for jalapenos with our popcorn. And so they were looking at us so strange that to ask for jalapenos with popcorn, like that's so odd. I've never heard of that before. So just that that culture shock leaving the town, this beautiful border community that we're a part of. Or one time we went to Whataburger and asked for chorizo taquitos, and the guy on the intercom said, "We don't have that, but it would be awesome if we did." So it's just this general this being a part of this community has brought a unique perspective on food, particularly. And when I did a study abroad in England a few years ago, and barbecue sauce is considered a hot sauce there. So just this general knowledge and expertise on food awareness is something that's part of my identity and my upbringing, but also part of my being born and raised in El Paso. So yeah, so as everybody's reacting in the chat, barbecue as a hot sauce is to me a strange concept. It's not hot at all. So, and then also just on top of it, my dad was the ultimate cook in the family. My Lebanese heritage on that side of the family brought further influence into my just general upbringing of food and culture as well. Recently, I had a conversation with younger family members, teenagers of that age range in my own family on that side of the family, and they all complained about Mediterranean food, and that was shocking to me because that's something that I've always loved and it's always been a part of me. And just to hear family members not liking the food of our culture was a little bit of a shock and a little bit sad. So this made me want to grasp onto that part of my identity as well. So that's just in general my theme in this presentation. So I incorporated, this is a workshop I did through the Pasos High School outreach last semester. I did this workshop with the students. I also did it, I teach English 1301 and 1302 usually. So I tried this activity with my own students as well. So if you want to participate, I encourage either on a sheet of paper or on, if you want to type into the chat as well. I want you to think about one food item, anything you want that brings you comfort, any kind of comfort, any kind of relaxation, anything that just brings you a sense of happiness, even we'll use that word. And if it helps, is it part of your favorite breakfast routine? Is it hidden in a larger meal? Does it bring your family together? Or is it a snack? Chili rellenos, look at all that, sushi. I think spaghetti, awesome. Salsa, ooh, I like that. Biscuits and gravy. Ooh, look at all these chats. I'm loving this. Let me read the replies. I'm loving it. Let me hop into the chat a little bit. Cheese, love cheese. Bizcochos. Ooh, fried chicken, enchiladas, gravy. Eggs in the morning. I put eggs at first and I changed my mind. That's a good one, Sarah. Frijoles. Ooh, see, all this different. We're immediate to thinking about it. So it's just a general thing that I'm loving these answers. Pizza. It's just something that is immediate to us as well. So one food item, anything that you want that brings you comfort. Something that I think is interesting is something that's hidden in a larger meal, like a spice, for example. And I'll type in the chat that, let me see here. Sorry, I think my connection is getting a little foggy. So if I lose track, please let me know. But there is a spice that I love called, let me type it in here. There's a spice that I love called za'atar, and it's an herb, it's a blend. It's actually not just one spice, so it's an herb blend of different spices, and it's called za'atar, and that's something that comes to my mind as a comfort spice, a comfort food. It's hidden in a larger meal. You know, you don't usually eat it plain, but it's hidden in a larger meal, and it's an important part of my identity as well. So that was something that I would write about, for example. So moving on with this workshop. When you cinnamon, yeah, see, exactly. There's, you know, you can do full meals like you all are sharing with pizza, eggs, caldo de res, you know, anything like that. But there's also just this whole these little hidden ingredients that either we just enjoy the taste, the simple idea of taste, or they become part of this important meal. So whatever food item you chose for this first, you know, the comfort in food question, if you want to share in the chat, or if you're writing this down or typing it somewhere. Now I want you to, you know, I tell my students just to get them brainstorming and thinking, but to list at least 10 different descriptive words to describe that food item that you originally shared. So when I tell my students this, so if it helps you, think of how we use sensory detail in that sense. So we think about how it looks, how it tastes, how it smells, different adjectives and different reactions. So if you want to share in the chat different descriptive words that food, good, just gooey, spicy, cheesy, I love it, crunchy. I think I have that actually for mine as well. So when I've introduced the word, the herb za'atar that I would choose for this activity, I would describe it as savory, herbal, rich, crumbly, aromatic, delectable. It's natural, good, smoky, warm, feel it, yummy. Yes. So all these good just words that we associate with food, we associate maybe with comfort or just some kind of relatability. I think spicy, for example, is relevant to the examples that I was talking about earlier about being a part of this wonderful border community as well. So that's, you know, that's how I get my students thinking about, just to kind of brainstorm how to write with descriptions as well. So excellent. Keep sharing if you're comfortable, but I'm loving all these words in the chat. Yummy, smoky, warm, earthy. Earthy's a good one. Earthy's a good one. I think of like feta cheese for earthy, or truffle oil or something like that. So now think, and if you're comfortable sharing in the chat, you can answer this, or if you just, I recommend you write it down regardless somewhere. Why did you choose this food item? I mean, a lot of you all were immediate in choosing this food item. So why did you go to it? You know, so I ask my students the why question all the time. How does it make you feel? And we think of tone words. That's an excellent, like Yasmin said, grandmother used to make it for me. So why? The why is a way we can grasp into deeper meaning for it as well. So we think of tone words here. Joyous, good. Time with family, variety of salt, good. And yeah, you all can share tone words like you're doing here, or just general phrases as to why. For example, with the herb za'atar that I shared earlier for my choice, I have different reasons why. It's a part of my family recipes. Za'atar is an herb that's used in Mediterranean food, so it's a part of my family recipes as well. And it's also a part of how I prepare my favorite breakfast meal. So I love making eggs in the morning. I love getting up super early, that particular time of day before your responsibilities really take place, and you have that hour to really kind of get into your get used to yourself in the morning and the day before your life starts. So it's that kind of whatever time frame it is for you, but maybe that 5 a.m., 6 a.m. time frame. And it's for me, making eggs in the morning is a good part of starting my day. So I add that herb za'atar to my eggs because it's what I was taught. My dad taught me how to do that, and it's part of my Arabic culture to use that herb for everything. So it becomes a part of a larger meal. So just my love, admiration, pride, joy, anticipation, and calm reaction. So it's those are the reasons that I would kind of grasp onto that. So feel free to keep sharing. But the reason I'm telling you this is food is a type of identity. Identity is who we are. It has depth, right? And these are just some factors of identity. I mean, if I'll be happy to share it. It's really good. I recommend it. It's very tasty, and if you, especially if you like savory foods, it's a good addition to the recipe. But and if these are factors I have for identity, but if there's other factors that aren't on here that come to mind, please share them in the chat. I mean, use this chat throughout this presentation because this is all collaboration of culture. But identity is, I connect food with my identity, which to summarize, identity is who we are, right? It makes us who we are. We're human, we have layers, we have so much to us, so we have depth. So just to break down the factors of identity, I think of ethnicity and culture as part of identity. That's very broad, but it's a representation of language, family, values, beliefs, attitudes. I consider myself to be a mutt, where I have a lot of different ethnicities that make me who I am, and I love that because I can learn so much from it and what makes me me. Your job is part of your identity as well, right? Our professional roles make up our identity too. You know, what inspired you to be in the job you are now is part of who you are. It brought you there for a reason. I love learning. I love literature. I love communication. So that's how I made a career out of it as an English instructor. So you stop and think, you know, why am I here? What is my job? And how does it connect to who I am? Religion is another aspect of identity, right? Any level of faith or belief, or just whatever brings a sense of peace, is just a general concept of religion. If you're a parent, who you are is passed down to your children, so that's an important part of your identity. And you're a child, is what values you're taught as a child when you were growing up, what you were taught and what you were socialized into makes up who you are as you progress into adulthood. And just general values, what you hold strong importance to. A set of behaviors, I guess, is a general term for values. Set of behaviors that you follow, that you instill in your everyday life. Hobbies, what you do for fun and enjoyment, whether that's sports, hiking, watching movies, etc., listening to music, singing, dancing, art. It's all a type of hobby and skill. And then your gender identity, of course, too, your personal sense of one's own gender. So those are general, just to kind of conceptualize the term identity into these factors and plenty more that aren't listed on here. And, you know, I asked this question, so how does this connect with food? You know, how do I bridge the concept of identity with food? And I break it down into these following lists as well. And again, plenty more, but this is what comes to mind. This is what I think about. This is what I remind my students in the classroom when we talk about food and culture and identity. So when we think about memory, memory is spending time with a loved one. Some of you all shared that it was a reminder. Your comfort food was spending time with a grandparent. So it's a memory. Favorite meal growing up. Sense. I think a scent, smelling something, is an important sensory sense that we have that makes us think of the past. It takes us back to a particular moment in time. So I think scents are very important. And culture is learning a recipe, you know, passed on for generations and sharing it with others. Do you have any family recipes that you hold near and dear and close to your heart? And also adapting it for the future, because recipes, it's okay to change recipes. Sometimes that's frowned upon, but it's this idea of, you know, adapting to modern ways of lifestyle as well. And like Danielle sharing in the chat, it's excellent, you know, growing grits served many ways. It's all the different ways, and it makes it complicated, but it makes it interesting, and it's just having a particular way it's made. And I love it. Yes, Vicks Vapor Rub. It's all part of who we are, and it's this memory and smell. So just I think recipes are records of the past, to bridge that gap. And just this level of comfort. It doesn't have to be about a family recipe. Just after a long, stressful day, you come home. What is your favorite meal to eat? Either to cook, bake, or just sit down and order and make on your or make on your. It's a favorite meal after a long day. You had a long day, and there's comfort in recipes or food in general as well. Hobbies and interests, meaning, do you apply cooking and baking as a career or a way to spend an afternoon? It's a hobby as well. But I think also it's we kind of lost that human contact communication in the past year of just going out to a restaurant with loved ones, sharing moments together at a dinner table, meeting people and growing from others to learn why food makes us so unique as well. And food also connects last names and regions. Recipes adapt under climate situations in the region. So it's just such a larger, I think, purpose to it as well. So these are just ways that I remind my students, remind myself of how general food is such a general concept. So how we connect that to identity, I think is so important, and just so, or not even important, just so interesting to learn about and just become who we are. And I'm loving what you all are sharing in the chat. Jenny saying spaghetti is what I feel so comfortable making. It's identifiable with so many cultures, and that's very true. There's so many different connections to it. So I really like these quotes. These are two different on the screen. These are two different articles about food, culture, and identity. So the first quote reads, as a second generation Palestinian refugee, nothing connects more to my Palestinian heritage than Palestinian food. And my late grandmother's stories of Yafa's orange groves are all I know and cherish of a lost homeland. So it's kind of in a sadder tone of a homeland that's no longer a part of who she is, but that memory it's a good connection. That quote's a good connection to memory, I think. And the second quote, rituals have the ability to create a space within an everyday space that is sacred or meaningful, whether you have this connection to family in the past or it's something you're starting new and it's a new tradition. When foods are incorporated into a ritual, they have the potential to be the significant point that changes the air of space from ordinary to extraordinary. So this is a simple idea of a ritual and creating a safe space is something that a lot of people lost, I think, in the past year, of just going to a restaurant or just having people over for dinner. And it's just it's an important part of connection and just the human interaction as well. So just branching into my story a little bit more, I brought up at the beginning that I grew up a little bit on my dad's side, particularly with a Lebanese background. So it brought a lot of confusion in a silly way. I mean, you know how kids are, but the Lebanese heritage is very family oriented. Family is a big deal. It's very important. So there's always endless amounts of food that someone's aunt, grandmother, cousin, uncle, etc. Collaborate and bring together. People in this culture bond over food. So it's a big part of just coming together and eating. It's a big deal. So I would bring traditional Mediterranean food to the cafeteria sometimes in elementary school particularly, and kids would be so confused. What on earth are you eating? What is that? I don't get what you're eating. And I have on the slide, this is pictures of different common Mediterranean dishes, grape leaves, tabbouleh, hummus, and kibbeh. So just showing up and bringing that brought a lot of confusion to the elementary school cafeteria. Kids were often not clear on what I was bringing, what on earth I was eating, but it's who I was. It was a big part. Looking back, reflecting back, it was a big part of me. And also just it would family members playfully argue that their recipe is the best. or theirs is the most authentic. Like they went to Lebanon and the great great grandparent gave them the official recipe. But just looking at different cookbooks, different handwritten recipes. I mean, each recipe has has different names. Even just the spelling of these names, it makes it complicated. And what's the right way? But the point is, there is no right way. It's what you were brought up with, and it's what brings it together for you particularly. And it's allowed me now as an adult wonderful opportunity to share different approaches, share my recipes with my friends. My friends weren't brought up with that type of food, so they go to Mediterranean restaurants and they ask me, is this place good, do you recommend it? And I always joke that no, the best restaurant is my house. So it's just this, but it's a wonderful opportunity to share my recipes with my friends and loved ones as well, and also just adapt to my own style. I'll be honest, I'm not eating as much. Mediterranean dishes, for example, have a lot of red meat, so I'm not eating that as much, but reminding myself that it's okay to adapt to modern, what I want and what makes it approachable for me. So this is my story that I'd like to introduce with y'all, and I think I have a picture. Oh, I have it in a minute. So why this matters, as a child, it was almost this embarrassment as being different for my food taste. It's like, ooh, why do I not have similar connections to what everybody else has at the cafeteria? But now as an adult, reflecting back, it's such an important part of who I am and it's that sense of pride. So it keeps my ancestors alive, and it's again that sense of pride that I represent and appreciate variations within the Arabic community. El Paso has a very large Arabic community, and just sharing that together and collaborating for younger generations. And it's a way to be creative though too, reminding myself that cooking is an art. So adapting recipes based on my own interests is important too. It keeps the recipe respect to the culture, but adapts as well. And it builds human connections. Like I said, my friends have bonded and learned so much about who I am, and I can share that with them, and they can share it with loved ones. It's just this general notion of food appreciation. And how I put it to the classroom, I tell my students, I teach composition writing, and a goal in that class is, how do you bring agency? How do you bring power to your writing? So it's to show my students who you are, and what makes you who you are is how you can bring that outside world into the classroom to give that sense of power. And I have a picture here. Yeah, I have a picture here of, I don't know, I think I'm about 4 years old, obsessed eating hummus, major Mediterranean dish, important Mediterranean dish. So yes, Crystal knows some of my family members. So she's shared in the chat, this food was a part of my childhood. So, store-bought hummus does not have a chance with me. It's just the worst in the world. So I'm just already a sucker for authenticity. And I love that. I would love to collaborate with Persian foods, because I'm sure there's different variations as well. So that would be wonderful. Yeah, I love that picture. It's store-bought hummus never had a chance, because I was raised with the authentic stuff, as you all can relate to with your own upbringings of whatever recipes you were brought up with. And I'm sure is a particular way it's made. Danielle's been sharing the example of grits, for example. So it's an important part. So I don't think we have time for every single poem, so I'll hone in on the first. I'll just kind of gloss over them, and I'll paste them into the chat if you feel like following along. But I share these poems with my students, and this is the first one. It should come up in the chat. I'll double check. And the first poem is Ode to the Onion by Pablo Neruda. So I just posted the link in the chat, but just a general understanding of this poem. I'll read it aloud and just kind of share how I have my students begin reflecting on it. Ode to the Onion by Pablo Neruda. Onion, luminous flask, your beauty formed petal by petal, crystal scales expanded you, and in the secrecy of the dark earth, your belly grew round with dew. Under the earth the miracle happened, and when your clumsy green stem appeared, and your leaves were born like swords in the garden, the earth heaped up her power, showing your naked transparency. And as the remote sea and lifting breasts of Aphrodite duplicating the magnolia, so did the earth make you, onion, clear as a planet and destined to shine, constant constellation, round rows of water upon the table of the poor. You make us cry without hurting us. I have praised everything that exists, but to me, onion, you are more beautiful than a bird of dazzling feathers, heavenly globe, platinum goblet, unmoving dance of the snowy anemone, and your fragrance of the earth lives in your crystalline nature. We could dissect this poem for a long time, but just to kind of summarize, the a simple idea of an onion that we often don't eat plain, right? It's almost that example of part of a larger recipe, but this birth of food from earth and a natural type of miracle, a cherished love for a common item that's used in recipes, larger purpose, and our narrator here cherishes this natural, simple life force over wondrous beauty, this natural form that is important in everyday recipes. That's a part of a larger purpose. And another poem that I think is fun to share is, let's see, this one I think is really interesting as well. It kind of relates to what I mentioned. This is called Meditation. I just posted the link in the chat. It's called Meditation on a Grapefruit, if you've heard of it, by Craig Arnold. And this is more about thinking about everyday life. So I'll read it aloud. And again, I just posted it into the chat. It should work. But Meditation on a Grapefruit by Craig Arnold. To wake when all is possible before the agitations of the day have gripped you. I love that line because it's just that reminder of these moments we have to ourselves a little bit before our day starts. To come to the kitchen and peel a little basketball for breakfast. To tear the husk like cotton padding. A cloud of oil misting out its pinprick pores, clean and sharp as pepper. To ease each pale pink section out of its case so carefully, without breaking a single pearly cell. To slide each piece into a cold blue china bowl, the juice pooling until the whole fruit is divided from its skin, and only then to eat, so sweet, a discipline precisely pointless, a devout involvement of the hands and senses, a pause, a little emptiness. Each year harder to live within, each year harder to live without. And I think it's a great, that quote, agitations of the day. The narrator is finding comfort in food to start their day out, but just an overall purpose. Clean, sharp, those are good descriptive words, thinking back to the beginning of the workshop where you use tone words to describe sensory reactions to food and how a grapefruit tastes very sour and it's not for everyone. Not everybody enjoys the grapefruit, and it's specialized, it's unique, it's special for each person, whatever food item brings you comfort. But the grapefruit represents the delicate, I think, nature of life itself and appreciating these quieter moments before our daily responsibilities that we lose track. I kind of got a chance to revisit this during quarantine because I was teaching online. So I got a chance to appreciate these quiet moments before my day fully started and holding on to that, because sometimes we don't always have time for that. I know I don't have time for that all the time. So it's just a good reminder of life itself and how fast it is. And it just keeps us going too. And then I have one more. This is a really interesting magazine, so I'll paste it into the chat. I share with my students this reading here. If you click that, you have to kind of scroll, so I'll summarize the reading here, but because I know we don't have a lot of time left. But this is a magazine, and it was a group of teachers who asked students, who particularly refugee and immigrant students, to write about the taste of home. So it's food themed poetry that students wrote about related to their identity and what their upbringing was. And it's a really long list of poems in that link that I just put in the chat. So I'm going to share two that I think are wonderful examples of that. The first one is called Disapprovingly, and it's by James M. He's from Burma, and he talks, this is what he says, what the narrator says in the poem. So it's called Disapprovingly. In Burma, growing up, we didn't use forks or spoons before eating. My dad, Zuapa, washed our hands with love and care. We waited for them to dry. In order to devour our food with our hands, white rice giving us energy. In Tukwila, when I tried to devour my food with my hands that I washed myself, Americans stared at me disapprovingly in the school cafeteria. At home, though, I still use my hands. It is our family's culture, laughing, not feeling embarrassed. So it's this general poem about, not even about the food itself, but it's about the actions one takes while eating food. And with the narrator, they're used to eating with their hands. So the narrator got strange looks in the cafeteria. They weren't using utensils, but once they got home, they could still practice that cultural notion of eating in a normal situation. So I think it's a great poem just to show behaviors of food as well, not just the food itself, but the actions one takes. And in that same link, it's a little further down, there's one more poem I'd like to share, and it's by Nathalie Rosa, and it's called Where Food is an Art. She wrote in Spanish and English to honor her indigenous roots. So it's called Where Food is an Art. I am from a place where the food is an art. Every bite is a spicy piece of our culture with flavors that our indigenous ancestors gave us. Our food is not only food, it is a way to communicate our feelings. It is a way to talk with our family. It is our history, our identity. But now everything is not the same. The tortillas smell different. The salsa is not spicy. Our special gifts are mixed with chemicals. Our food enclosed in a plastic prison. Our kitchen table may be in another country, and the people who ate with us are no longer here. But we will return in the morning lights and the darkness nights to conserve our special secrets. A little bit of a darker tone at first about the change in environment and how the ancestry was lost a little bit, and the narrator feels lost to the upbringing that she had and that connection of the past, that kind of records of the past idea. But this sense of pride to bring it back and conserve and save these special secrets that nobody else should know about. So I think that's a great example of the poetry as well, just in a different context to close on the idea, that food is just a part of our identity. And we're out of time now. I think we'll have a few more minutes, but how I close, and if you're interested, I'd love for you to share your poems with me if you found this activity insightful, that everything you talked about at the beginning of this workshop, what food item brings you comfort? How would you describe that food item? Why did you choose this food item? Combining it together, I have my own students and the high school students, when I do the Pasos outreach, I have them write a poem about that food item they chose. And I remind them, if it helps, think about why you chose this food item. Just those little questions to remind them again, why did you choose it? And use those tone words that you thought of at the beginning to describe the food. And I just tell them, students, myself too, I'm not the strongest in creative writing. So it's just a reminder to myself as well that write anything that comes to mind first. There's no such thing as a bad poem. This is the writing process. These words are your quote ingredients to your story. So putting that all together in some type of poem. And I had my English 1302 students last semester do this as their final exam, actually. And it was some really interesting concepts and poetry that they collaborated and shared with their classmates on. So I know we don't have time to share now. If you want to share a little bit of something you wrote, you can type it in the chat, but if you're inspired, it's something to think about, to kind of incorporate who you are, why food is a part of you, and sharing that love and admiration feeling together in a poem is how I bring that all together. So that is my presentation. I think I made it just in time. But if y'all have any questions, or if you want to type in the chat, but it's just, like I said, it's food. I find food so inspirational, and it's just a major part of my identity. And I think it's a part of a lot of people as well. And it's been really fun to share with my own students. And I didn't get a good chance to really dive into the high school outreach, but I think it's something that I would like to carry on further. So thank you all so much for your time. And hopefully, if you want to share, I'll share my email. If you want to share your poem or what you wrote, here's my email. Reach out to me. Or if you think of ideas, recipes, anything, let me know. But thank you all so much. And this was a fun opportunity to share something that I enjoy as well.